My name is Yves Michelin. I'm a professor in Vétagro-Sup, an agronomy and veterinary French university. And the second author is Julien Chadeyron from Clermont-Auvergne University. Our presentation concerns an atypical project because it was carried out without specific funding at the basis of a common interest in landscape history. At the beginning, we were only few people, and we have gradually enlarged the contributors for covering the totality of a large department, the Puy-de-Dôme, as we are going to expose it to you now. So our presentation is organized in 5 parts. At the beginning, we just present briefly the ancient cadastres in France and how they can be a tool for landscape reconstruction. Then we will describe more precisely what Napoleonic cadastre is. Then we will present our aims and the method we adopted. Then some results that we will discuss. And at the end, we will present some perspectives. Well, landscape reconstruction, in fact, needs to combine different sources. Of course, we think first about direct representation of landscape, for instance, old photographs or painting or drawing or text. For instance, here in the Chaîne des Puys, you have some drawing and painting from Viollet-le-Duc, a famous architect. If one wants to explore very ancient landscapes, landscape representations don't exist. So you need to find natural archives, for instance, pollen or charcoal or sediment that can permit to have an idea of the vegetation and also the type of erosion. And then you can obtain information for very ancient period. And it permits to have an idea of the landscape of this period. But from the historical periods, you have also indirect sources, for instance, management documents or trial or contracts. And here you have a document added in a trial that represents the possessions, the properties of all the villages around the Chaîne des Puys that were in conflict with the local lord. And then it permits to have an idea of how the landscape looked like at the 17th century. And for the recent period, maps and cadastres could be very useful, and we will focus our presentation on these documents, and you see how you can reconstruct the landscape by combining these different types of sources. Well, in France, from the 16th century to nowadays, you can find maps or cadastres, and both have interest and limits. From 16th, 17th century, the maps are not very geometric because often they have been copied one to another one. At the same period, the first cadastres start, but they are linked to persons and not to place. So they are not geometric maps, and there are very few available in the archives, and the quality is not very good. Fortunately, during the 18th century, there is a change, the way of mapping, and the maps are mainly Cassini maps. It took around 70 years. The scale is a middle scale, so it's very interesting for having global vision. The cadastres are named Terrier at this period. Now there are topographic maps. The scale is very variable from one place to another one, and only richest lords have the funds to finance these maps. And many have been destroyed during French Revolution. In the 19th century, there are two types of sources, état-major maps that are topographic with a very well-known projection. The scale is 40,000, so it's very good and cover all France. And the land use is similar to cadastre. And Napoleonic cadastres, they have been made during the first part of the 19th century, and it's topographic maps, but without standardized projection. It covers all France with very detailed information concerning land use and land cover. So for general landscape synthesis, état-major maps are very well adapted. And if one wants to go deeper and to have precise landscape analysis at the municipality level, Napoleonic cadastres are more efficient. Just to give an example, I use it in my PhD research a long time ago, a transcript on topographic maps, the land uses, but it took a long time to obtain this result. By hand, it's not possible for a large area. And so our idea was to integrate this information in a GIS. During the 16th and 17th centuries, you had only these types of visual maps. Here is an ancient terrier from the 18th century. At the beginning of the 19th century, the first cadastres was only describing the land use. And here you have a map from 1806. People disagree with the system. The government decided to create a map of each parcel of each landowner, and it is these documents that we are using. The Napoleonic cadastre has two books. One is a table of landowners, and another one is a list of parcels. And as you see here, there are many interesting information. First, you have a number of each parcel. You have the name, the residence, and the job of each landowner. You have the type of land use, you have the area, and you have also a class that represents the value of this type of cultivation. And you have two types of maps. One is assembly map per each commune, each township. And this assembly map represents only land use. For instance, this municipality, it's Mazai. And here you see one part of this commune, that is a section, and you see all the limits of the parcel, and the color represents a type of land use. So we had two aims for this project. First was to give the general public a global overview of the landscape at the scale of the department. And the second was to involve students who are learning GIS. And so we adopted a four-step methodology. First was to georeference the assembly plan of each commune, and we define a standardized process. The idea to obtain a good accuracy, less than 15 meters. And for that, we use a current cadastre that has been vectorized by a National Geographic Institute. The name is BD Parcellaire. And this was a reference for locating the points that permit the transformation. We cut the result with the current limits of the municipality, and we converted the file in a compressed format to permit a web access. And we try also to experiment the same work at the section sheet level. And so we added new files for referencing. We use buildings from National Geographic Institute, the BD Topo, because many buildings have not changed from the 19th century. And then we cutted the georeference section maps to only keep inside each section limit. Just to locate precisely the Puy-de-Dôme Department, here is an idea of how the Puy-de-Dôme looks like. It's in the middle of France, in the Massif Central Mountains. It's a large area. It produces very diversified landscape, and also this landscape has changed a lot from the 19th century. Some pictures to illustrate how the landscapes are diversified in this area. Okay, so we decided also to involve students for two reasons. Because georeferencing a cadastre is very formative for students, both for GIS practice, but also for better knowing what people can do with Napoleonic cadastre. And also because it took a long time to cover all the department. We decided to associate three types of students, and we started 3 years ago. First, master's students from physical geography and urban geography, and agronomy engineer students. And as you see, the agronomic students, we had 110 per year for 3 years. And in 2020, the geographers were 80. So with the support of all these students, we covered a large part of this department. And we presented the project and asked the students if they preferred working with us and being evaluated to the quality of their georeferencing, or if they prefer a regular exam. and they all decided to be part of this project. So it's not exactly a participatory process because they were not directly voluntaries, but after discussions, they agreed. Due to the COVID confinement, because the students were in their home, they had nothing to do. So for them, it was something to occupy their mind. And I proposed them many supports, as you have an idea on the right down corner. Now we will present some results. As you see here in this map, you have an idea of the making of the cadastre, Napoleonic cadastre in this department. The color represents a period, and the graphic represents the number of townships that have been cadastered during this period. So it started in 1888 and it finished in 1838. So in 30 years were necessary for covering all this department. And you see that the process were very slow at the beginning and were more active after the middle of the 20s. Okay, just to give an idea of the results, on the left hand, you have several communes that have been cadastered at the same period. And what is very interesting is to see that there is a very good coherence between one commune to another one. Violet color represents vineyards, and you see that the limits are very good from each part of the borders. And the paper has the same quality, so there's not a lot of changes in colors from one commune to another one. But on the other hand, you see there are some problems when you try to compare cadastres that have not been done at the same period. Here, the Volvic municipality, it's a very old one, 1809. There is only forests that are represented. The paper has not the same quality. The quality of the mapping was not so good. And you see the other commune just closed, Malosa. It's the same year, but it was not the same surveyor, and the quality is better. And here you have also cadastres from the 30s that are more precise, but not connect to the oldest. When one wants to work with this data, it's better to define a territory that has been cadastered at the same period of the section sheet scale. Here is the Volvic municipality. We defined the limit of the sections. We georeferenced each section. You have an idea of the connection between each section. And then we have by hand vectorized all the land uses. And we obtain this map that is very interesting, but it needed a very long time to do it. And there was many topological errors. So it's not a method that we can generalize. As I said, there are some limits due to the duration of the making of this cadastre. At the beginning, there were only 4 surveyors, and they were not so professional. So you see some differences between 2 surveyors that have done the assembly maps at the same period. The first one, there is only forest represented. The second one, you have still land cover, and the quality of the map is better with this surveyor than this one. And also during this process, the quality has changed, but also the landscape representation. Here you see it's small lines. Here it's shadow. It's another type of shadow. Here it's another type of lines. Here's lines and shadow. Here you have topographic curves. And another difficulty, fortunately not very usual, is that some municipalities have changed during the time. And the case of Saint-Rémy is very interesting because I think it's the worst one. A part of it, in 1869, this forest has been given to the neighboring township, Celles-sur-Durolle. Then in 1908, this village, Paladuc, decided to be erected in a municipality. So that's why this part is colored in pink. And in 1932, the village of La Monnerie decided to leave Saint-Rémy. So today, the municipality is shorter than in the past, and then we had to vectorize this limit to cut this map. And what about the participatory project? Well, the results of the work made by the students is not always perfect. There is an heterogeneity of the result related to the heterogeneity of the students about their formal knowledge and also about their motivation. And it was not connected to the quality of the map of the surveyor or the landform or the date. But we made an interview with agronomic students to know their opinion of this work. And what is very interesting is to compare the level of quality with the level of motivation. So you see in red, it's a bad quality. And you see it's also those who are little or not at all interested in making this work. But those who were very or exciting or even moderately interested in the work, they made correct or very good work. And here's the result. In green, you have the townships that have a good accuracy, less than 15 meters. In orange, those who have a medium one, between 20 to 50. In red is the really bad work that should be done again. And in gray, you have the municipalities, townships that have not yet been done. So just to conclude some perspectives, the visual maps in a raster format is interesting, but not very useful if one wants to make some deep analysis. So our idea is to vectorize. Now, for several years, experiments have been done. First with état-major maps, which are more easy to automatically vectorize because they have been printed, so it's more homogeneous than cadastres that have been unmade. The idea is, in fact, to make an image analysis and using filters first to eliminate text and landforms representation, and after that to vectorize. We have not yet experimented, but it is something that we want to do in a short future. Well, we have some project. One is to georeference old terrier, because with the cadastres, then you can use the field limits as controlling points that is not feasible with present data. We have a project with a local association in the Saône-et-Loire department. Another idea is to use the information of the État de section book with the toponyms to try to understand the connection between several types of names and local situation. For instance, Condamine or Chapel or Mons are connected. Condamine is connected to the property of lords from the 6th or 7th century. Chapel could be a place where you can find the old settlements that have disappeared. Mons is the same, it's coming from a Latin word. And Rand is a Celtic name that indicates the limits of local Gaulois population. And also it's possible to use a toponymic name correlated to vegetation, because often there is a disconnection between the name and the land use. For instance, you can have forest of, and it's not anymore a forest, or at the opposite, bruyères, fallow lands, that are not fallow lands. So it can give information about how it was several decades before the cadastre was made. Another question possible is to analyze the tax regime between the Terrier and the Napoleonic cadastre, because the Napoleonic cadastre is correlated to land value. And also, of course, make land use changes analysis and crossing with vegetation maps and for period with satellite images. A last perspective is to give the possibility to the general public to use our work. And we have a first experiment with the Chaîne des Puys area. And so you can use this URL and then use the WMS system to visualize but be patient because it's not very fast. So many thanks for your attention, and I'm ready to answer your questions.